Hello and welcome into Big Time Sports Production. I'm your host, Alex. This is our first video, and in this video, we're going to be previewing the 2019 Big Ten Conference. And I believe in major college football, this is probably going to be the most interesting conference in college football this season, especially on that Western division, that Western side, because there's a lot of teams that are on the up and up on that side, and I believe it's really a race between about five or six teams within the conference. So it could go really any way on that Western division, and there's going to be some competition on that Eastern side as well. We're going to work our way from the East side to the West side. So without further ado, we'll get started with our predictions for the Eastern division of the Big Ten. Coming in at number 7 on the Eastern side of the Big Ten, I've got the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. 2018 was definitely not a great season for Rutgers. They've really struggled in football since joining the Big Ten. 1-11 last year. Their only win was against Texas State in the season opener. Low points on the season were an embarrassing 30-point loss at home to Buffalo. Uh, Head coach Chris Ash, he's moving into his third season with a record of 7-29 at Rutgers, so not good. And some of the positives for Rutgers coming into this season, they returned 60% of their total team production, 75% on offense, and 44% on defense. Little low on defense with the production they're returning. That was something that they struggled on all ends of the ball really last year. So I don't know where to start with this, but Rutgers on the offensive side, they're going to need Artur Stakowski to improve tremendously, the quarterback. Last year, his stats were 4 touchdowns, 18 picks, and 1,158 passing yards. So again, not good stats for Stakowski. He's really going to have to improve that touchdown interception ratio for them to be competitive at all, to even have a chance to make a bowl game this year. Rasheem Blackshear, he's their halfback that he's returning. He's probably their most exciting offensive piece that they have returning for them. So look for him to carry a lot of the load for Rutgers, but they're going to need the Stikowski to obviously improve as well and to get some production from the receiving core as well. For me, looking at their schedule, starting off, I believe they'll beat UMass towards the end of the season. They have a matchup with Liberty. I'll give them that one as well, and then I'll give them one Big Ten win for this year, and I believe that's going to be at Illinois right after the Liberty game. So I have them at 3-9 overall and 1-8 in the Big Ten Conference. I know this one's going to surprise a lot of people, but I have Penn State sitting at number 6 in the Big Ten East. There's just a lot of question marks, in my opinion, surrounding this team in 2019. They took a step back last year. They went from getting to the Rose Bowl game in 2017, went 9-4 last year. James Franklin, he's really picked up after O'Brien left for the Texans. He's picked up after him. He's now in his 6th season at the helm for the Lions with a record of 45-21. Key players for them in 2019, I believe it's going to be Sean Clifford's going to be a big guy for them. He's the quarterback to be for the Nittany Lions, and I just looking at their who they lost and things like that. They bring back 56% of their production, 44% on offense, and 68% on defense. I'm really worried about their defense in this season, or their offense, excuse me, in this season. I just don't believe they brought back enough on the offensive side. I just believe they're going to be a lot slower, and they're not going to be as versatile on the offensive side of the ball. Sean Clifford is not the prototypical running type quarterback. He's more sit in the pocket. It's going to really slow down the offense, I believe, for them. So we'll see what happens there. And they lost a lot of their backups transferring out Penn State. So if injuries start to become a problem for Penn State throughout the season, I really believe their season's going to start to kind of fall away from them as well. Looking at this year, I have them winning their first game against Idaho, their second game against Buffalo, dropping to Pitt, and then at Maryland, I have them losing those. I have them beating Purdue, and then towards the end of the year, I have them winning at Minnesota, and then that final game of the year against Rutgers, I have them winning that as well. That would give them a 5-7 overall record and a 3-6 in the Big Ten Conference, which would be, I believe, it would be a huge disappointment for Penn State fans. But I just believe that realistically, that's what's probably going to happen for Penn State this season. Coming in at number 5, I got the Indiana Hoosiers. I really like this Indiana football team this season. And the reason why I really like this football team is they return 77% of their returning production, 78% on offense, and 77% on defense. That's a lot of returning talent. And this was a team that battled and competed with a lot of big-time schools last year. Notably, they only lost by 11 points to Michigan and lost by less than a touchdown to Penn State. So this is a school that's on the up and up, and they've been on kind of the up and up for a few years now. They've been that school that nobody really wants to face because they've come in and they've given a lot of those big schools like Ohio State and Michigan, they've really pushed them to the brink and almost beat them. Indiana, the one thing that scares me about them, they have a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator from last year. Their coach, Tom Allen, he relinquishes his duties as being head coach and the defense coordinator. He's just going to solely focus on being the head coach, which I believe is good, but it all depends on if they keep the same schemes that they've been running. And according to Tom Allen at Big Ten Media Days, that's the case. That they are going to keep the same. He hired people that are going to try to keep the same schemes as he was running. So if that happens, I believe that will bode well for Indiana in the coming season. Looking at realistic expectations, one thing they're going to have to improve on, they've been 3-8 over the last 2 years in games decided by less than 8 points. So that's something they're definitely going to have to improve upon this season. And with so much returning talent, I believe that's something they can do. They have, I believe, a dark horse Heisman candidate and Stevie Scott at the running back position. He was tremendous for them last year, and I just look for him to improve even more this season. Looking at their schedule, I have them beating Ball State, Eastern Illinois, Ohio State, UConn, and then I have them dropping at Michigan State, then coming back and winning at Rutgers. And then I believe they're going to kind of fall into a losing skid there for a little bit, and they'll rebound at the end of the year to get bowl eligible with win at Penn State, and then in that final game of the year at Purdue. So that puts them at a record of 7-5 and 4-5 in the Big Ten Conference, which I think that would be a success for them this season. Get back to a bowl game and just keep improving on the progress that Tom Allen's made there at Indiana. Coming in at number 4 in the Big Ten East, in my opinion, it's going to be the Maryland Terrapins. 2018 record, they were 5-7. They struggle. It's Maryland. The last few years, they've had some big wins, but they've also had some really bad losses. I mean, that win against Texas for the second straight year, that was huge. Texas won one of the major New Year bowls last year, so Texas is definitely they're dark horse to make the college football playoff this season. So Maryland, I really believe, has the tools to possibly be a very good team this coming season. Looking at them, They return. Michael Lansky returns to Maryland after 3 years at Alabama. He was the assistant coach there, and Michael Locksley, excuse me, I believe he knows Maryland, and this was a great hire for them. He went to Alabama and really, I believe, learned a lot of things just coaching under Nick Saban, and he's just going to bring this to Maryland and make them an even better team than they've been in the last few years. You got to remember, Maryland's had a lot of problems with their coaches and just things surrounding their university that they've really went through the last few seasons, and yet they've still been able to put some decent teams on the field and had some pretty good explosive offenses. It's really going to be what they can do on that defensive side. But yes, Mike Locksley in his first season after being away from the program for a little bit, they returned 60% of their production. They also have 69% of their offense and 56% of their defense returning. And they've done a good job in recruiting from the DMV, which is that Maryland District of Columbia area. And they could have some stellar freshmen that help them out in this season. And all throughout Big Ten Media Day, that's what Michael Locksley talked about, was honing down and recruiting in that DMV, which we've seen some great players come out of in the last few seasons, and they've been sprinkled in all over some of the best programs in football, like Alabama, Clemson. So I believe Mike Locksley is somebody that can do that for them. Looking at their schedule, I have Maryland winning versus Howard. Syracuse, that was a very good team in the ACC last year. They gave Clemson and some other schools within the Big Ten, they gave them some real, or within the ACC, excuse me, they gave them some real scares. Most notably Clemson. So I don't see them winning that game. I have them rebounding against Temple. Penn State, I have them winning at Rutgers. I have them kind of falling off for a little bit, and I have them at 3 wins going into the last 3 games, or I have them with about 1 win towards the end of the year, but I have them rolling off wins at Northwestern, Wisconsin. So I really believe this is a team that's on the up and up and can improve a lot in this season. So I have them at 6-6 overall and 4-5 in the Big Ten Conference. Only reason I have them again, obviously ahead of Indiana, is I have them beating Indiana at home. They're just a really good team at home, so I believe that they're going to beat Indiana on that basis of beating them in the head-to-head matchup. So they'll get the 4th spot in the Big Ten Conference. Coming in at number 3 in the Big Ten East, Ohio State Buckeyes. Again, this is probably another one where people are like, "What are you thinking?" But they had a 2018 record of 13-1. Ryan Day's in his first season as the head coach. I just believe Ohio State's got a lot of pieces they've got to try to rebuild from. I mean, obviously they got a new head coach in Ryan Day. They lost a legendary coach in Urban Meyer to retirement. They lost their quarterback to the NFL draft, and they have a quarterback coming in, Justin Fields. Yes, he was a top 5 prospect coming out of high school, but he was sat on the bench all last season at Georgia. So he's been out. He hasn't played football in a year now, and I really was never really that impressed with their defense all last year. I don't think they're going to have the firepower that they had last year on offense. Yes, they have Dobbins coming back. He's going to help them out. He's definitely probably one of the best running backs in the Big Ten, but I just believe their offense isn't going to be nearly as explosive as last year, and I don't believe their defense is going to be uh, a ton better. Looking at what they return, they have 63% of their returning production, 42% on offense, and 85% on defense. Again, it's going to come down to how well that 85% that they have returning on defense, how well they develop, and if they can put out a much better product than they did last year. Because they're definitely going to have to if they're going to compete towards the top with Michigan. So we'll see how 2018 or 2019, excuse me, turns out for them. But right now, I have them on the season winning their first game of the year against Florida Atlantic, beating Cincinnati. I have them losing at Indiana. Indiana, I tell you, they're going to beat some of these bigger teams this year. They're going to get over the hump and win some of those games. Have them losing at Nebraska. Nebraska nearly beat them last year. They probably should have beat them. Their defense wasn't as terrible as it was. So I have Nebraska improving and beating them this year. Um, Towards the end of the year, I have them rolling off a bunch of wins at Northwestern, Wisconsin, beating Maryland, winning at Rutgers, winning at Penn State. But I have them losing in that crucial game at the end of the year at Michigan. And so overall, I have them going 8-4 and 5-4 in the Big Ten Conference to finish third overall in the Big Ten East. Coming in at number 2, Michigan State Spartans in the Big Ten East. Their 2018 record was 7-6. In my opinion, this is going to be dominant defense in the Big Ten. They're going to have a very, very, very good defense this year. They returned 66% of their returning production, 78% on offense, and 53% on defense. It's no secret. Michigan State, they're almost like Wisconsin on the other side, in my opinion, where they go as far as their defense can take them, and they've proven year after year after year that they're going to put one of the best defenses in the Big Ten out there on the field. And I don't believe that changes this year. But I really think their offense picks up from last year, bringing back quarterback Brian Lewerke. I think they just keep improving, and it's going to help them a lot having that play caller that is familiar with the system. So I believe they're going to really improve in this season. Looking at realistic expectations for them this year, I looking at the start of the season. I have them beating Tulsa, Western Michigan have them winning, Arizona State have them picking up that one at Northwestern, Indiana, and at Ohio State and at Wisconsin. I have them winning both those games. The games that I have them dropping are at Michigan. That's third from the end of the season. Michigan is just a good team, and Michigan State's had their number in the past. I just believe Michigan wins it this year. I believe they have a more experienced roster. Let's put it that way. They have a more experienced roster, and I believe Michigan gets over the hump and beats them. Maryland at the end of the year, I have them losing that one as well. Again, Maryland's like Indiana. They're one of those teams that you can't sleep on. They're going to compete with you week in and week out. So those are the two games I have them losing um, in the conference on the season. So 10-2 overall and 7-2 in the Big Ten Conference. Depending on how the season shapes up, that Maryland loss could either derail them and knock them out of having a shot at one of those New Year's Six bowls. I don't think they're going to be in the college football playoff, but potentially might have an opportunity at a New Year's Six bowl, depending on how that Maryland loss really hurts them. So coming in at number 1, Michigan Wolverines on that Eastern Division. They had a 2018 record of 10-3. Their head coach is Jim Harbaugh in his 5th season with a record of 38-14. They haven't won a Big Ten Conference championship since 2004. And I believe that changes within this season. I believe they're going to get to that Big Ten championship game. Just looking at the returning production, 66% of their returning offense and defensive players, 78 on the offense and 53% on the defensive side. They have Shea Patterson back. He's arguably one of the top guys uh, looking at quarterback of the year, Big Ten, all Big Ten honors. He's definitely a Heisman hopeful. And I just believe having that much experience and having that good of a quarterback back is going to really help him. Donovan Peoples-Jones on the defensive end, he was an absolute animal. And I think he's just going to help the defense even more this season. I believe that end of the year last year where they struggled a little bit, or where they struggled quite a bit on the defensive end, I believe coming into this season, they're going to have that figured out. They're going to have that fixed, and they're going to be a really, really tough team to play this season. Really tough team to beat. Looking at realistic expectations for 2019, I have them going undefeated in the Big Ten Conference. Don't really think there's anybody that's going to beat them, have a chance to knock them off. The only loss that I have for them is Notre Dame, and that's a very winnable game for them as well. That's really the only game I have them potentially losing, and they could very well win that game. It's at home, but I just didn't want to be the person to say they're going to go undefeated. I have them at 11-1 and 9-0 in the Big Ten Conference. So that's who my winner for the Big Ten East is going to be. The Wisconsin Badgers. This is probably going to surprise people. I have them at 7 because last I just they lost their quarterback in Alex Hornibrook to Florida State, and they're bringing in a quarterback that has a little bit. I say that loosely. Jake Ferguson. He's got a little bit of experience at the quarterback position for the Badgers, but I don't know. They scare me this year. They're going to have a tough defense. They're going to be in games, but I don't see them winning a lot of those games this year. Last year they were 8-5, and I just believe a lot of those games. Looking at traditionally at Wisconsin in the past, you look at them. Uh, they thrive on having a strong defense and a great running back, Jonathan Taylor. I believe everybody's looking at him to be a Heisman hopeful this year. I think he's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to take a step backwards though, because there's going to be so much of the workload dependent and put on him. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of stress and a lot of pressure put on Jonathan. And I just don't think the other offensive weapon or anybody else on the offense is going to be able to help him that much. And their defense is only going to be able to take them so far. And you look at Wisconsin traditionally, they win a lot of those close games. Their record, like last year, 8-5 record. I mean, that could easily be flipped to 5-8 with a lot of those with a lot of the close games that they play in. So I just think that they're going to struggle a lot on offense this year to score points, and it's going to hurt them in the long run. And with a lot of the other Big Ten teams, especially on the Western Division, Western side of things improving, it's gonna hurt them this year, and they're gonna be shocked with the record. I believe they're gonna finish 3-9 overall and 1-8 in the Big Ten Conference. And I give them that one win. I have them winning against looking at the schedule at Iowa or against Iowa at home. Excuse me. That's the one Big Ten win that I give them. The other two wins on the season I give them are against Central Michigan. I have them winning that one, and I have them beating Kent State as well. That first game against South Florida at the beginning of the year, that scares me just because South Florida's been a very competitive team in the American Conference the last few years. Gave UCF, who's been one of the better teams in college football these last few years, gave them a real scare last season. And I believe that loss at UCF at the beginning of the year is just going to kind of transpire for the rest of the season. This isn't an easy schedule they have either. They've got to play Michigan, Michigan State, at Ohio State, at Minnesota, an improving team, at Nebraska, a team that's on the up and up too. So I give them 3 wins on this season and 1-8 in the Big Ten Conference. Coming in at number 6 in the Big Ten West, Illinois Fighting Illini. Their 2018 record was 4-8, and their head coach Lovie Smith is in his 4th season with a record of 9-27. Illinois, I got to give them props. They went out there and they did get some players, not the most traditional way. They went out there and got some guys through the transfer portal this season. One of the most notable players is quarterback Brandon Peters from the University of Michigan. That was one of the biggest questions surrounding him this season was Brandon Peters and losing him. And we've heard Coach Harbaugh say on many occasions, Brandon Peters is a great quarterback, and Illinois really got a steal by getting him. And that's coming from Coach Harbaugh, obviously being able to having coached him before. I really believe he's going to help Illinois at that quarterback position. Looking at who they're returning, they return 75% of the production, 70% on offense, and 81% of their defense. This is going to be one of the most experienced teams in the Big Ten this season, and I just believe that's going to buoy and help them out a little bit. This is still a school that's I believe is going to struggle just because of the fact that look at Rutgers. It's another one of those schools that okay, you're a 4-8 record, you're returning players, but these players also have to develop and get better. Yeah, they started last year, but they also have to improve and make that jump, which I don't know if that necessarily is going to happen. There might also be some kinks to work out with Brandon Peters, even though I believe he's going to be a great quarterback. Going to be, I believe, some kinks to work out with him just for the fact that he didn't play very much last year. This is going to be his first time playing a lot of football in a long time, so we'll see how that bodes for him. Looking at their record or looking at their schedule for 2019, they start off against Akron at home. That I believe they win that one. At UConn and then at Eastern Michigan Eastern Michigan. Excuse me. So I have them winning their before the Big Ten Conference. I have them winning their 3 out of conference games to start the season. So 3-0. Then they got to go and play. They play Nebraska at home. We'll have them losing that one. And then at Michigan and at Minnesota, I have them losing that. It just gets really tough for them in this conference, and I just don't believe they're at that level to compete week in and week out inside the Big Ten Conference. I have them beating Wisconsin for their only Big Ten Conference win. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Rutgers. That's definitely a winnable game. Rutgers could definitely be a team that doesn't win a game in the Big Ten Conference, so that could be a winnable game. I just have Rutgers winning that one just on the mere fact that if there was going to be a team that Rutgers, because they have probably one of the most competitive schedules in the Big Ten, if there was going to be a letdown and have an opportunity to win a game, that would definitely be it. And they finish off the season at Michigan State and Iowa. That's really tough playing both of those games. So, again, I believe they're going to stay where they're at, 4-8. And they're going to go 1-8 in the Big Ten Conference. I know that'll probably be a disappointment to some Illinois fans, but I don't see them improving as much as some of the other teams within the Big Ten West. Number 5, Minnesota Golden Gophers. Their 2018 record was 7-6, and this was a team that was very up and down in 2018 as well. Started off a little bit rough, but really came on, especially on the offensive side towards the end of the year. Their head coach PJ Fleck is in his third season with a record of 12-13. Looking at things that could get excited about for Minnesota in 2019, they returned quarterback Zach Annexstad. He wasn't terrible last year, but he's definitely going to have to improve. He had 7 interceptions and 9 touchdowns. That's not a great stat line, but he also didn't play the entirety of the season. He kind of came on as the starter midway through the season. They're definitely going to have to see him make the next step. He was a young guy last year, a true freshman. See him maybe improve that to about 17, 18 touchdowns and 5 or 6 interceptions. That would be a better mark for him and make them a much more competitive team within the Big Ten. So they're going to be good on the defensive side of the ball too. Don't get me wrong. This is a team that is going to be tough on the defensive side of the ball. They return 78% of their returning production, 90% on offense. And again, this was an offense that really, really improved at the end of the year, and 66% on defense. In my opinion, this team has an opportunity to win the Big Ten Conference. I mean, any of these teams 1 through 5 have a shot at the Big Ten West. It all just depends on how injuries Boyd and how well they actually play. There's a lot of hype around a lot of these teams and players, but it all depends on what they can produce and put on the field. I have them going 8-4 and 5-4 in the Big Ten Conference. Looking at their schedule, those losses, I have them losing at Purdue, at home to Penn State, at Iowa, and at Northwestern. So that's where I have them losing. I have them winning some game. I have them winning a big game against Nebraska. Got them beating Maryland, who I think is going to be a tough beat this year. So I got them winning some of these games in the Big Ten. They definitely have one of the easier schedules in the Big Ten Conference. They avoid Michigan completely. They avoid Ohio State completely. And I mean, talk about they avoid Michigan State completely. So definitely one of the easier schedules within the Big Ten Conference. Definitely could surprise me again. This is just my predictions. I have them at 5-4, but they could definitely be a team that could possibly be a 2-loss team in the Big Ten as well. So it all depends on how the marbles fall and how some of these other teams perform as well within the Big Ten this season. Number 4 in the Big Ten West, the Purdue Boilermakers. They made it to a bowl for the second straight year last year. They went 6-7, and they're under the third season of Jeff Brom as their coach. He's got a record of 13-13. Nobody can forget Purdue. I just think they're really going to build off of some of the successes they had last year. Most notably, that huge victory they had against Ohio State at home. They lost their quarterback from last year, which is a big loss. But I believe Elijah Sindelar, he's going to come in and he's gonna fill in well for the quarterback that they did lose, because you look at Sindelar, this isn't his first rodeo within this offense. He played in 2017 quite a bit. He in 2017 he was a starter and he threw for 2,099 yards, 7 interceptions, and 18 touchdowns. So he had a very good 2017 season. The only thing that concerns Purdue is his the injuries that he's had to deal with over the last few years. He's really been injury prone. Had to sit out the spring game this year because of injuries, and that's one thing I know that scares Purdue about Elijah Sindelar. But if he can stay healthy and on the field, this could be a very, very, very scary team in 2019. I have them winning against Nevada in the first game of the year. Then they play Vanderbilt at home, so I have them winning that. Then I have them I have them dropping to TCU. TCU had a kind of a down year last year. They're going to be improve a lot, I believe, within the Big 12. And I'd look for TCU to be a better team, and I just don't see them winning that game. Uh, Notable wins, I have them winning in the Big 10. I have them beating Maryland at home. I have them winning at Northwestern, and I have them winning at Wisconsin. So again, Purdue's another one of those schools. 5-4 in the Big Ten Conference. I have them at 4 because I do have them winning their head-to-head matchup with Minnesota. But this is another school that they avoid playing Ohio State completely. They avoid playing Michigan completely, which bodes very well for them, and they avoid playing Michigan State completely. In my opinion, that's going to help them a lot. Purdue and Minnesota definitely have outside shots to do well in the conference this year, especially avoiding those 3 very tough teams within the Big Ten. So we'll see how well they actually do. It's just going to all come down to setbacks if they have setbacks against some of these lower rated opponents that they will face. I have the top 3 positions in the Big Ten West being very, very close. Have them all sitting at this 6-3 mark. So, but coming in last of the teams that I believe will finish 6-3 in the Big Ten is going to be Nebraska, and I only say that because I believe they're going to lose the head-to-head matchups to Northwestern and potentially to Iowa to end the season. So, I have Nebraska's record in 2018 was 4-8. They didn't really improve from 2017 with that. They had that same mark in that season, but definitely I believe in Scott Frost's second season they're going to make a lot of headway, uh, especially because I believe they have one of the easier non-conference schedules coming into the Big Ten. I think that will help them out a lot, and I believe you just weeded out a lot of those players in Mike Riley's system. So this is going to be a lot more of Scott Frost's type of team. And you can see this in the amount of players they have returning. 57% returning production, 59% on offense, and 55% on defense. And let me tell you, the players that are returning, these are Scott Frost's players and the players that have now bought into his system, which is something I think he struggled with in year one, is getting some of the players to weeding out those players that didn't necessarily fit in with what he's trying to go towards here at Nebraska. So I believe there's going to be a jump here in season 2 for Scott Frost, and they're going to improve. I'm not going to go out there on a limb and say they're going to be competing for national championship and things like that. I don't think that's possible this season, but I really believe they're going to be a lot better. And it's all going to start with that quarterback position in Adrian Martinez. He's definitely a Heisman candidate, Heisman hopeful. He had a great 2018 season, and he was only a true freshman. He's only going to get better, in my opinion. The only thing that concerns me is the concern around running back. As many know, Washington, was picked and dubbed to be the starting running back to come into the season, he's in a lot of legal trouble right now. So they might be looking or have to go more towards Moses Bryant and Brody Belt, both true Nebraska guys. Brody Belt from Millard South High School and Moses Bryant from uh, Elkhorn South. So they're going to have to go with more Nebraska guys, I believe, at the running back position. And it's going to be the production that they get from those guys that I believe is really going to affect how Martinez progresses in this year, too, because Nebraska can't realistically put everything on his shoulders. Some of the workload's going to have to come from the running backs and being able to mix it up a little bit between that run and pass. So looking at their schedule, again, like I said, they have one of the easier non-conference schedules, in my opinion, of Big Ten conference teams. And starting off, I have them beating South Alabama at home. Then I have them winning at Colorado. They played them really well last year in that season opener, just couldn't finish the game. And I have them winning it this year. Then they play Northern Illinois at home. Some of you remember a few years ago, Northern Illinois was that school that came into Nebraska and beat us. I believe this is kind of a revenge game, and Nebraska avenges that, comes in and puts a number up on Northern Illinois. To start the Big Ten, they're at Illinois. I have them winning that. Again, the three losses I have them losing in the Big Ten Conference. I have them losing at home to Northwestern. I have them losing the next week again at Minnesota. And then I have them winning out until the last game of the year, and I have them losing to Iowa. And I know that would be kind of a disappointment to some Nebraska fans. It's like, oh man, we get really close to that Big Ten conference or that Big Ten conference championship game, but I just don't think this is going to be Nebraska's year. I don't think it's realistic to think they're going to jump from 4-8 all the way to the Big Ten championship. I see them going 9-3 overall and 6-3 in the Big Ten conference, but due to those losses to Iowa and Northwestern, they'll fall behind them within the conference. At number 2, I got the Iowa Hawkeyes. I believe Iowa has got probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten coming back. Nate Stanley has been he's underrated. He's probably the best pro style quarterback that's in the Big Ten this year. I mean, his numbers have been stellar the last 2 seasons. He's thrown the last 2 years 52 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. That's tremendous. And I really look for Iowa's offense to take that kind of that next step and that jump. That's something that Iowa struggled with in the past. They've been one of those teams that they can put a great stellar defense out there on the field, but their offense has never been able to really back it up. I believe Iowa does a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball just because they do have Nate Stanley, and he's going to be, I think, a force to be reckoned with, and it's really going to help them within the Big Ten this season. Last year they had a record of 9-4. Kirk Ferentz, he currently is the oldest Big Ten coach in his 21st year with a record of 152 and 101. Realistically, they have a pretty tough schedule coming into the season. They have probably one of the better schedules in the Big Ten, having to face Michigan at Michigan, having to play at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, at home against Michigan State. They do avoid Ohio State on their schedule, but yeah, just one of the tougher schedules, I believe, in the Big Ten. So I have them winning. I have them losing to at Iowa State. Iowa State, they were a good team last year, and they're going to be even better this year. Mark my words. So I have them losing to Iowa State. I have them losing at Michigan, at Northwestern, and I have them losing at Wisconsin. Again, that's where I have them at. I have them winning that final game of the season against Nebraska. I believe it's going to be a close game. I just don't think Nebraska gets over the hump and beats them, particularly this year. So they'll win the Legends Trophy, I believe, for the second year. Believe it's like the third or fourth year in a row. So I believe the Big Ten or the Legends Trophy, that final game of the season between Nebraska and Iowa, that's going to stay in Iowa City. So 8-4 overall and 6-3 in the Big Ten Conference. Coming in at number 1 in the Western Division for the Big Ten, I've got the Northwestern Wildcats. I have them at the 2018. Their 2018 record was 9-5. I believe they build on that a little bit this season. Their head coach is Pat Fitzgerald in his 14th season with a record of 96-70. Big for them. They did lose their quarterback from last year, but key players that they're returning. You look at one big guy that they're getting Hunter Johnson, and he was at Clemson 2 years ago. He redshirted last year, so spent the season on the as a redshirt at Northwestern, and he'll presumably take the starting position this year. He's like Ohio State, getting one of those big name or big transfers, 5-star quarterback. He was highly recruited coming out of college and or out of high school, excuse me, and didn't really get the starting position at Clemson, so decided to go to Northwestern. I think he's going to be good, but again, it's going to take him a little bit to get back into playing because he has been sitting out for so long. And you look at their schedule. You look at Northwestern overall. They're returning 62% of their returning production, 53% on offense, and 71% on defense. That's where I think it's going to be key is the 71% on defense. I think they're going to have one of the better defenses in the Big Ten West. There's going to be a lot of good defenses, but they might be towards the top, in my opinion, just because they did very well last year, and I look for them to build on that this year. And I think their offense is going to be even better coming into the season, especially with Isaiah Bowser. He's going to get even better. He's another one of those guys, along with Adrian Martinez and some of these other guys in the Big Ten. He's probably a dark horse Heisman candidate, in my opinion, Isaiah Bowser. So looking at their schedule, I have them losing at Stanford at their first game of the year. Stanford, they're on the up and up. They're an up and coming team. I believe they rebound and win against UNLV in the next week. I have them losing at home against Michigan State. But what really it comes down to is I have them winning at Nebraska, and I have them winning against Iowa as well or against Iowa at home. And that's where it's really going to come down to is I believe they're going to win those two head-to-head matchups. So and that's going to propel them to that 6-3 record in the Big Ten Conference and that second Big Ten championship game in a row. And I believe it just comes down to the experience factor. Iowa hasn't been in the Big Ten championship game in a few years. Nebraska hasn't been in it in several years. And I just believe that experience factor is going to help Northwestern secure one more Big Ten championship game. Overall, knowing that I picked Northwestern to win the West side, Michigan to win the East side, in the Big Ten championship game, I believe Michigan ends up probably winning that game just because they're a more talented team. Let's be honest. I think anybody would put it out there that Northwestern they don't have the talent at this point that Michigan does. I believe Northwestern loses by 2 touchdowns, 42-28, and Michigan breaks that drought from not winning a Big Ten title since 2004. I believe that ends this season, and I believe they have an outside shot to make the college football playoffs coming into this year. All right, our next installment in the series is going to be the Big 12 Conference, looking at Oklahoma, Iowa State, TCU, Kansas, all those Big 12 schools, looking at how they're going to fare in this upcoming season. And we'll get you those predictions for that. Thank you for tuning in to our first installment of Big Time Sports Production. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informational. Again, this is all just purely my opinions and based on facts that I've looked up and I've found and just my what I've seen in the past and my opinions. So thanks for tuning in and see you guys next time.